In 1945, inside secure government buildings across the United States, decisions were made that never appeared in public records. The war was nearing its end, but planning did not stop with victory. Behind locked doors, military officials drafted scenarios meant never to be spoken aloud. For decades, these plans remained classified and nearly forgotten. By early 1945, the United States stood at a turning point. The Second World War was entering its final phase. Germany was collapsing. Japan was under relentless pressure. Publicly, the focus was on ending the conflict and bringing soldiers home. Privately, a different conversation was unfolding. Washington was filled with tension that did not appear in newspapers. Government offices worked long hours. Files moved quietly between departments. Maps were updated. Not for battles currently being fought, but for conflicts that might follow. The American leadership had learned a harsh lesson during the war. Peace could be temporary. Alliances could shift quickly. Yesterday's partner could become tomorrow's threat. The Soviet Union was still an ally, but mistrust was growing. Intelligence reports hinted at expanding influence. Political differences were no longer abstract. They were geographic. Military planners were instructed to think beyond victory. They were asked to imagine a future where cooperation failed, where borders hardened, where diplomacy collapsed. This was not announced policy. It was contingency thinking. Silent, methodical. Within the Pentagon and other secure locations, small groups of officers and analysts began drafting a classified war plan. The goal was not immediate action. The goal was readiness. They studied troop numbers, supply lines, industrial capacity, rail networks, airfields. Nothing was symbolic. Everything was precise. Civilian oversight existed, but only at the highest level. Most elected officials were unaware. The public knew nothing. Even many senior military commanders were excluded. Secrecy was absolute. The atmosphere surrounding the project was cautious. This was not driven by panic. It was driven by calculation. The United States had emerged as a global power. With that status came fear of surprise, of being unprepared again. Documents were stamped and restamped. Top secret. Eyes only. Distribution lists were short. Copies were numbered. Some were hand-carried rather than mailed. Every precaution was taken. The plan itself was given a neutral title. Something administrative. Nothing that would draw attention. It blended into thousands of other classified files created during the war. Outside these rooms, soldiers continued fighting. Families waited for letters. Factories produced weapons for a war the public believed was almost over. Few suspected that another possible war was already being imagined. This was the beginning, not of a battle, but of a plan designed to remain unseen. As spring turned into summer in 1945, the classified planning intensified. The defeat of Germany removed one uncertainty, but it created another. Power in Europe was shifting rapidly. Red Army positions were carefully tracked. Political intentions were analyzed through fragments of intelligence. The war plan expanded in scope. It was no longer theoretical. It outlined specific scenarios. Worst-case assumptions were used. Optimism was deliberately excluded. Planners assumed limited warning, rapid escalation, minimal cooperation from allies exhausted by years of war. The United States assessed its own vulnerabilities. Troop fatigue, demobilization pressure, public desire for peace, industrial transition from wartime production. These factors were treated as strategic weaknesses. At the same time, American advantages were calculated. Naval dominance, strategic bombing capacity, access to bases across the Atlantic and Pacific, and, increasingly, a new weapon whose existence was known only to a few. Every decision was framed by uncertainty. There was no guarantee the plan would ever be used. But planners were instructed to act as if it might be needed tomorrow. Disagreements emerged inside the classified circle. Some officers believed the assumptions were too aggressive. Others believed they were not aggressive enough. There were debates about ethics, about feasibility, about consequences. But these debates never left the room. The plan included timelines measured in days, not months. It assumed that speed would determine survival, that hesitation would be fatal. This was a lesson learned from 1941. Names of cities appeared on maps. Supply depots were marked. Transportation corridors were highlighted. The human cost was calculated quietly. Numbers written in margins, then crossed out, then written again. No public justification was prepared. There were no speeches, no press releases. If the plan were activated, explanations would come later, if at all. By mid-1945, the document reached its most complete form. It was reviewed, revised, approved in principle, then locked away. Only a handful of people knew the full extent of what had been created. Fewer still understood its implications. The war ended. Celebrations filled the streets. Parades marched. Factories slowed. Soldiers returned home. The plan did not disappear, but it stopped moving. It remained in storage, in vaults, in archives, waiting for a future that did not arrive. The climax of this story did not arrive with explosions or headlines. It arrived in silence. In the months following the end of the war, the classified plan faced a final moment of evaluation. The world was changing quickly. Former allies were redefining relationships. Lines were being drawn, not yet visible to the public. Senior officials reviewed the document one last time. They understood its scale. They understood its consequences. Activation would mean another global conflict, one potentially larger than the last. The decision was not written as an order. It was expressed through an action. The plan was not approved for execution, but it was not destroyed. This was deliberate. Destroying it would suggest certainty. Locking it away preserved options. It remained a shadow contingency, a last resort, something that could be retrieved if history took a darker turn. As years passed, priorities shifted. New strategies replaced old ones. Technology evolved. Leadership changed. The original authors retired. Some died. Files were reclassified, then downgraded, then sealed again. By the time parts of the plan were quietly declassified decades later, the world it described no longer existed. Borders had changed. Nations had dissolved. The assumptions felt distant, almost unreal. Historians who encountered the documents described them as cold, clinical, detached. There was no emotion in the writing. No triumph. No fear. Only calculation. The plan had never failed, because it had never been used. But its existence revealed something else. A mindset shaped by total war. A belief that peace was temporary. That preparation had to continue even when guns fell silent. For those who discovered it later, the shock was not in the details. It was in the silence surrounding it. The absence of public memory. The lack of acknowledgement. A war plan, designed in secret. Preserved in secret. Forgotten in plain sight. The documents were filed away quietly. No announcement. No record in public logs. They moved from desks to folders. From folders to cabinets. From cabinets to vaults. Time passed. The people who had written the plan returned to ordinary duties. Some were reassigned. Some retired. Some never spoke of it again. Their names remained on the pages. Typed. Signed. Then slowly forgotten. The buildings changed. Offices were renovated. Departments were renamed. New priorities replaced old fears. The plan stayed where it was. It was not erased. It was not revised. It was simply left behind. Years turned into decades. Paper aged. Ink faded. Margins yellowed. The assumptions inside the document lost their sharpness. Cities changed. Borders shifted. Governments rose and fell. What once felt urgent became distant. What once demanded secrecy became irrelevant. There were no reminders. No memorials. No official acknowledgments. The public never knew what had been prepared in their name. No debates followed. No questions were asked. Silence settled naturally. Archivists handled the files without context. Box numbers replaced meaning. Labels replaced memory. When parts of the plan were eventually declassified, they appeared incomplete. Detached from their moment. Stripped of urgency. Readers encountered them without emotion. As fragments. As curiosities. There was no shock. Only distance. The world had moved on. The people were gone. The fear that created the plan no longer had a name. What remained was absence. A plan designed for a war that never came. Prepared by men who were no longer remembered. Stored in rooms no one visited. No photographs marked its creation. No recordings preserved its discussions. Only paper. And silence. The plan did not change history. But it existed alongside it. Unseen. It waited through peace. Through tension. Through new conflicts. Then it stopped waiting. Not because it was used. But because it was forgotten. And eventually, even the idea that it had ever mattered faded away. The vaults stayed closed. The corridors stayed quiet. History continued forward. Memory did not. And somewhere in the archives of the United States, a war plan remained. Hidden. Unspoken. Left behind. If this story mattered to you, consider subscribing. More forgotten history is coming.